Hi, geometry class. I had my first question on the communication board, so I thought I'd answer it by way of a video. I'm really surprised we haven't had more questions yet. This book is a little bit challenging, but it's really good for you because it's going to cause you to think in ways that you've never thought before. And that's basically the whole point of this geometry class is we're going to learn how to think, how to be push yourself just a little bit further than what you do in an algebra class. So if it's hard for you, it should be because we're engaging math muscles that you haven't used yet. So stick with me. I'll help you out as much as possible. I'll answer your questions. So please, on the communication board, if you don't get something, please post your questions. So I'm going to go fairly quickly on this. I haven't really done these ahead of time, so hopefully I can do them quickly. We're going to start with section B. Now you're going to find in this book the A questions tend to be a lot easier, the B questions get harder, and the C questions are for the advanced student if you want to challenge yourself. So let's get started on some of these problems. So 31, someone had a request for number 31, so let's just start right there. So 31 says in the diagram PR. Now, you're going to see, I'm going to do a lot of teaching in this video too. So PR, if it has a line on top of it, we're going to say the segment. So the segment PR, this sign means congruent. If segment PR is congruent to segment RT, well, it says they are congruent. That means that the lengths are equal. So when you put the line over top of it, it's like the picture or the image of the segment can lay over top the image of the other segment and they will match up perfectly. Without the line over top of it, you can write it like this. It would be the measure of PR equals the measure of RT. They're basically the same thing. One has numbers associated with it. The other one is just a picture of what the lengths are. We'll get into this more as we go. So that's one of the things that they've given us in this problem. And they're telling us that S is the midpoint of RT. And they're giving us that QR is 4. So I'm going to write this in. We need to practice writing. You're going to be writing in your drawings. That's going to help you to be able to do these. ST is 5. These are really helpful pieces of information. These are like puzzles. You have to really think puzzly in geometry. And that's about all they've given us. Now, let's go over here. We have PR is congruent to RT. So I'm going to mark it like this. PR, there's PR, and I'm going to put a little slash through it that means that they're congruent, is congruent to RT. So it's going to look like that. So let's see, is that all they've given us? They said these are congruent. Oh, the midpoint. They're saying that S is the midpoint. So S is the midpoint right here of RT. So that means that this divides segment RT, this is segment RT up here, directly in half. So if there's 5 on the right side of the midpoint, there's going to be 5 on the left side of the midpoint. So you can see we're starting to fill in the details a little bit. So one of the questions is, what is the length of RT? RT is 10 because we would add 5 and 5. Now the length of RT, we can figure that out right now, which way I just said is 10. And since this RT is congruent to PR, we know that this side is 10. We have that this little piece QR is 4. That means that PQ has to be what is left to equal 10. So 10 minus 4 is going to give us 6. And that's all the parts that they asked for in number 31. You do have to think a little bit. You have to work backwards. You have to really challenge yourself on these, especially the B problems. Now, 32 is a little bit more challenging. If you look at 31, they're asking the lengths of segments. So 31, like A, says what is the length of RS? Now you see there's no bar on top of it because they want a number. They want to know what number it equals. RS is the distance between R and S, the length of that segment, which would be 5. Now when we move down to number 32, they're asking for coordinates of points. They're not asking us what the length of these segments are. So be sure you're looking at that. It says in diagram X, in the diagram, X is the midpoint of VZ. So X is the midpoint of VZ. So let's just mark the midpoint. This is the part of geometry I love. I love this is like algebraic geometry. So that's the midpoint. So what that means is this segment and this segment are the same. If it's the midpoint divides a segment into two congruent segments. I hope you're writing in your notebooks all the theorems, definitions, and postulates, which you're going to be filling that up. That's going to be really helpful because we're going to be doing proofs and you need to know your theorems, definitions, and postulates. All right, now I know the length of this whole segment because they give us the coordinate of V is -12 and the coordinate of Z is 22. So we know the length of that whole thing. Up to here it would be 12 and then we would add on 22. So the length of segment VZ is going to be 34. We know that. So what that means is if we shared it between these two parts because they're congruent, each one's going to be 17. Now they don't want to know the distance, they want to know the actual coordinates of X, Y, and W. So to get the actual coordinates, you would add 17 on to -12 and that would tell you what X is. Because you're starting with -12 and we're going to go 17 to the right, so we're going to add 17. So this coordinate of X is going to be 5. All right, that's the only thing we can find out so far until we go and get some more information. It tells us that VW is 5, this distance. So if that distance is 5, we know that this distance right here is going to be 12. And we know that because this whole thing is 17, right? So we can also find out this coordinate because if the distance is 5, we're going to count backwards from -12, 5 units, and we're going to get -7. So that's that one. And we only have one more piece of information to get. We need to figure out what Y is. They also tell us that something else. Let's see. Vy is 20. So here's V, here's Y. So let me just do a little brace. Vy is 20. Well, we have 17 of them here, but we're going to go 3 more units to get to the 20. This is 20. So this is 17 of them right here. We need to add 3 on to this -5. So we're going to get the coordinate of, oops, this should be +5. That shouldn't be there. This is a +5. Wait a minute, I told you I was doing this. Yeah, this is a +5. So this coordinate is going to be +5 plus we need to add 3 more on, so this one's going to be 8. A little complicated. Rewatch that if you had trouble with what I was doing. We're talking about lengths and then we're adding it on to coordinates. All right, number 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, these are all with the same diagram. So I think I'll just do the odds on these. Oh, let me do the evens because you guys have the answers to the odds. Let me do the evens. So let's look at that diagram. We're going to mark our diagrams up. Get used to drawing. When you do these problems, draw the figure in your notebook. You might have to draw it several times, especially if you're going to use it several times like this one. So I'm going to start with 34. It says that DE is 45. So I'm going to put a 45 here. And EF is 5x minus 10. Now, what are they telling us? They're telling us that E is the midpoint of DF. When it's the midpoint, it's going to divide this segment into 2 congruent segments or 2 equal segments. You can say it either way. So in order to solve this for x, since we know these 2 segments are equal, we can set their measures equal to each other like this and solve it. So we're going to get 5x. If we bring the 10 on the other side, add 10 to both sides, we're going to get 55, and we get x equals 11. So that's all there is to that. It's really not too bad. Let's do number 36. I'll just switch colors and stay on the same diagram. So in 36, it tells us that DE is 2x minus 3. and it's telling us that EF is 5x minus 24. All right, now, same thing. We know that those two segments are equal, so we just set them equal to each other, and we have to be able to solve. Hopefully everyone came in here knowing how to solve basic equations. So I'm just going to solve that. I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides and get 3x. And I'm going to add 12 to 13 and get 9. And divide both sides by 3, so this color is nice and bright. So we get x equals 3 on number 36. It's that one right there. Okay, we're going to use the same diagram, and we're going to do I'll do number 38 for you. I'm just going to erase everything here and start fresh. I got this nice, cool erasing ability. Okay, it's the same one. Somewhere along the line, it must have told us that that diagram goes with them all, but I don't see that. So here we go. 38 says GE is 3y. So this is 3y. GH, ooh, this is a little tricky. GH is this one right here, is 7y minus 4. And EH is 24. Now, you know that E is the midpoint of DF. Have they told us that it's the midpoint of GH? I don't think they told us that, but it is true. Yeah, it is supposed to be the midpoint. Well, it doesn't have to be the midpoint, actually. So we don't need to know that's the midpoint. All we know, however, is this plus this has to equal this. So it's not necessarily the midpoint, though it might be. So that is one of the postulates that we did in this section where it said, let's see, it's postulate 2. It says if B is between A and C, then AB plus BC equals AC. So applying it to this problem, if E is between G and H, then GE plus EH has to equal GH. So let's just plug in the numbers now. So we know GE is 3y. EH is, let me just make sure I got this right. I'm looking at the wrong problem here. Okay, no, that's right. GE is 3y. GH is the total, so we'll put that over here at 7y minus 4. And EH is 24. So we have another problem, another equation to solve. I'm going to subtract 3y from both sides and get 4y. I'm going to add 4 to both sides and get 28. These all work out so nicely. So you get y equals 7. And that's how you do those problems. When you get down to 39 to 40, you're going to use the same diagram. You're going to mark it up the same way. The only thing, let's see, I'll do one more. Let's do number 40. I just like to erase all this. Let's switch our colors up too for fun. All right, so 40, it says GH is Z plus 6. So I'm going to do this. So this length is Z plus 6. And then it says EH is 2Z minus 4. And GE is Z. So this is similar to the previous problem. So we know that Z plus 2Z minus 4 equals Z plus 6. The parts equal the whole. So let's just solve this. This is 3Z minus 4 equals Z plus 6. And then I'm going to subtract a Z from both sides. I'm like prone to keeping my variable positive. So 2Z equals 10, Z equals 5. Now, the question they want to know is E the midpoint? Well, we know Z is 5, so I'm going to plug that in. Change the color up a little bit again. So Z is 5, and 2 times 5 is 10, minus 4 is 6. So no, it's not the midpoint, because if it were the midpoint, both sides would be the same. So that's it for lesson 1.3. Again, if you have any questions at all about your homework, you need to go to the communication board and ask questions, and I'll try to answer them either by video, or I might just do the problems and put up a picture of the finished product. All right. See you in class.